You know, it's funny. I sat there this entire time, especially during the format, trying to find something that I would like to play that wasn't Ryzeal, Mitsurugi, Fiendsmith, you know, the good old Malice deck, because I was never going to play that, so on and so forth. And it always comes back to some version of Bystial Fiendsmith, because that's the deck that I liked the most out of all the picks I could have had, and honestly, some of the most success I had was with these kinds of decks. What's going on, guys? My name is Joe, this is the Duel Factory, and it's been quite some time since I've done a deck profile, but sometimes you just got to find the motivation to bring something that you like, and in this case, I really like the Bystial Fiendsmith deck, have been for a couple formats now, and then with Duelist Advance, I believe the set's called, we got the introduction of these new Fiend cards that I was really excited for, because I was really liked the 2015 format, and Burning Abyss was the deck I actually really enjoyed. It was really good, and I thought they might actually have some good synergies in this deck, and it fixed one of the biggest problems the deck had, which was going second. And this is what I took the NAWCQ. As many of you know, I didn't actually have my invite for the season. I had not gone to very many events, and I was stuck playing a lot of Blue Eyes. So I had a lot of X3 finishes and stuff like that in the events I did go to. But I decided to play a version of this with the new cards, and I got there on technically day 0. Entered LCQ, got it, and then I played in the main event. Now the main event, I will admit, I did go X2 drop, but leading up to the event, I actually had a lot of fun like testing this deck and figuring out some theories with it and kind of just figuring out how to go. And I thought, in terms of what would be best, I thought the Bystial Fiendsmith version would be the best way to play it. I have seen some versions of the deck running around that were playing like all the Unchained cards, and it was basically like a Fiend pile deck. But I thought, one, that the Bystials were very good against most Mitsurugi variants and all Fiendsmith variants, which a Fiendsmith variant did technically win the event, even though it was Orcus Fiendsmith. And I thought Lubellion being able to generate Branded Regained made the Malice matchup a lot more manageable, because I feel like everyone has a bad Malice matchup. So I figured that could mitigate a lot of things, and I thought Lubellion was a very good card. And then going second, the new Fiend cards actually solve a lot of problems the deck had. But enough about that. I'm just going to go ahead and get into the list and show you what I played. Noting that profiling this, we will probably have a ban list coming up soon, and we'll have a new triangle format with Justice Hunters coming out. But I still think there's something cool that you can play, especially at the local level. And as maybe we can discover a new way to play it post-format, and maybe we can still play it as a rogue contender. But for the main deck, it's 40 cards. I will start with the Bystial cards, which is 3 copies of Bystial Lubellion. Like I said, I really like this card. I like that it generates Branded Regained. I like that it can search any of their utility Bystials, so on and so forth. And I love seeing it every hand. It has great synergies with the Fiendsmith cards being able to do your Necroquip plays and whatnot. I only played 3 of the DD Crow-esque effect Bystials, and I just played 3 of the best ones. So I played the 2 that are 1, obviously, and then I played 1 Baldrake. I have seen some lists with just citing patterns in general that do like multiple Baldrake, or if they're like maining the cards, they play multiple Baldrake. I like that idea, because we have so few good Bystial names currently, but in terms of it, it's not one that I'm trying to see 2 of at all. And the ones that I would like to see 2 or more of, obviously they're at 1, so I can't do that. So I figured the 3-3 split would be perfect. And it's kind of nice, especially when you open Lubellion, because a lot of your combos end on adding the Baldrake to your hand. And the nice thing about these types of strategies is once you have, it's a snowball effect, right? Like once you have the Magma in rotation, if your opponent doesn't cut you off from it, it's really hard to stop the deck from keep going. His effect is also really good. I just don't think it warrants playing multiple copies. And then the 1 copy of Branded Regained. In previous lists, I had been playing 2 copies of it, but I thought 1 was fine. Like, it's cool to open the card, but unless you open it specifically with a Bystial of your own, or if you're doing like an SP Little Knight play to banish your own cards, then opening 2 isn't the best, so we just reduce the number of it. And that was the Bystial cards. Onto the Fiendsmith. We are playing 3 copies of Lacrima. We're using it as the dedicated normal summon. At first, we were playing cards like a Tour Guide, and I believe we were also playing, no, I think it was just Tour Guide. But we were playing it because it's a normal summon like Lacrima that generates, what it does do, unlike Lacrima, is without going as the extra deck, it generates 2 bodies. They also happen to be Fiend monsters that also happen to be the same attribute, which comes up a lot in this deck. But that card has a hard time dealing with cards like Ash and Imperm, which Imperm was on the decline of popularity, but you're still seeing it here and there. Ash Blossom is in most main decks to stop like Molch armies and stuff like that, so it's an innocent, we'll say innocent bystander of that card existing. Lacrima, however, did not have that issue. Just because even if they do hand trap it, you can still go into your Requiem and still set up an interruption that way via Paradise. So at that, I decided anyway to play that instead of playing the Tour Guide engine, which the Tour Guide, yet not playing it lowers the ceiling, but you play more games and you see a lot more consistency in your dance. And then for the rest of the Fiendsmith cards, we played 3 copies of Engraver, and we also played 3 copies of Tract. At first, I was playing 2 copies of Engraver just because it's terrible into opposing draw and lockbirds and stuff like that, and that's something I feel like this deck didn't have like a huge issue with. However, it got to the point where I basically told myself I'd rather see the Fiendsmith cards and not see them. So that's why we bumped it up to 3. And Tract at 3 plays very well into Droll, because once you resolve it, you already have access to your Lurry and stuff like that, and if they droll, so it's fine. It does pose a small problem, because then it will cut you off from the spell card Mutiny in the Sky, which I think is the best card in the deck. But as long as you have access to your grind game, at some point you will get access to that card. And then we also played the one of Fiendsmith in Paradise and the one Fabled Lurry. I did think about playing Sanct, but I didn't think it was necessary after doing some testing with it. That is the Fiendsmith cards. Now, the cards that I've actually been most excited about out of the new main set were the new Fiend cards. I'm still unsure if it's Buio or Bui, but we'll call it the Dawn's Light just for short. This card's interesting. So, when it's on the field, monsters in the main leftmost zone, the most rightmost zone, can't be destroyed by card effect, right? So that's one effect right off the bat. And then it has another effect where it can target a fiend on the field, and then you can negate its effect if you do special summon this card, right? Third effect is when it goes to the graveyard, it lets you add a copy of Mutiny in the Sky, which is this card right here, right? Which Mutiny in the Sky is a miracle fusion for fiend or fairy monsters. And it can also add itself back by sending fiends from hand or field to the graveyard. These cards did a lot of things, right? One, it's a fiend extender, which, quite frankly, this deck, in terms of extenders, unless you have specifically a Bystial in hand, is starved for them, right? So I thought that filled a gap in this deck perfectly. 2, giving you access to this fusion spell solved another problem, whereas a lot of times when you played decks like this, especially ones that have monsters that have like huge fusion effects and stuff like that, you typically don't have a second way to fusion summon, which this now allows you to do. Third, I thought this deck's biggest problem with as many non-engine as has was going second. But now that we have access to these cards, this particular monster and the fusion monster, Lucci or Luce, whatever you want to call it, being able to not be destroyed by card effect if it's in the left or right zone is huge, because now opposing detonators, opposing Murakumos, have a really hard time outing your monsters, especially when you can summon monsters as big as theirs, maybe even bigger, because that fusion's huge. It's 3,500, right? And the idea is once you get the ball rolling in this deck, your opponent is never going to outgrind you. Like, if you get past turn 2, you should win, theoretically. But these cards were insane. They added a whole new, like, dimension of actual versatility the deck had. I have a lot, like, more options in terms of what I can make. Being able to add it back to summon out and, like, keep extending your play. Like, this card's really, really good. I'm surprised that they printed these as commons, to be quite frank. And then cards that kind of made it more worthwhile playing other cards in the deck. I played 1 copy of Abominable Chamber of the Unchained and 1 Unchained Soul Shavara. So the more you look at it, it's kind of more like a Fiend slop deck, which at that point you would think the Unchained version is a little bit better, especially that because you get more value out of these cards. But I did think because we had access to those cards that it made it worth playing them, just because it's now like it's way easier to access your Unchained Soul of Yama or Lord Yama, whatever it is, and being able to stick a Soul of Rage play via where it was before, where we didn't have that extra layer of the extra monsters we were making. Plus, we didn't have a battle queue at the time, which now we do, obviously. This deck makes it really easy, and I think those new Fiend cards warrant playing these to elevate the ceiling of your deck and give you more options what to do. And then for the non-engine, I played 1 copy of Talons because it's at 1, and I think it's the best card right now. We did play 3 copies of Fualos, and we played 3 copies of the Perulea, because I know how much Lucas loves that card. But I think currently these would be the best 6 to main deck in terms of overall, like, genericness, I would say. Plus, I feel like if you don't play them in your main deck, it's almost giving your opponent a free pass when you go second. Which, again, even with the new cards, I still think is this deck's biggest problem is being able to go second compared to the other decks. So I want to give myself the best chance to see more options than, let's say, other rogue-esque decks compared to mine, right? But that was the Charmies, and then we also play 3 copies of Draw and Lockbird. I hate playing this card in tandem with those cards, but at the same time, it could be your most effective card if you understand how this card works, right? Because you just have to be inside the window after a card was open. So if you have this card and you know it'll end your opponent's turn, and you have a sneaking suspicion they might have Called by the Grave or Nobleman, not Nobleman, a cross-up, a cross-like Designator, you can actually form it in a way where you activate that card and your opponent is now put to a decision. They either stop the card and they either stop it so you don't get additional advantage on your opponent, or they don't stop it and that card resolves, so you get basically see extra cards anyway, right? So this can be the most, like, a card can be very, very impactful as long as you play it in the right way. But I think you have to main deck it currently just because of how powerful it is, even though it's terrible against the Malice deck. And then the last bit of non-engine, I played 3 copies of Ash Blossom to stop opposing Charmies. This deck plays well into them if you know exactly what your lines are. But at the same time, there are situations where you will be forced to have to play into it, so I want to mitigate those as much as possible. And then I elected to play 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence, and the only reason I decided to do, well, there was 2 reasons. One, the Lunalight deck had just released, and I didn't know how popular it would be, but a Infinite Impermanence on Gold Leo, especially if it's our only play, is very impactful in that deck. 2, the Rise and Floodgate monsters, because these cards were being taken out of the main deck, was on an uptick. And I didn't want to lose or not have a chance to win, I should say, if my opponent stuck a Floodgate monster, but I didn't have an out to it. And I thought this was the best generic card to play. And that was the main deck. As stated before, it is 40. Now, on to the extra deck, which is the tightest part of the deck. And I will tell you right now, I summoned all 15 of these cards multiple times. So if you're thinking about looking at this list and trying to find different cards to play and stuff like that, good luck. Fiendsmith deck, we played 1 Moon on the Closed Heaven, we played 1 Requiem, we played 1 Sequence, we played 1 Agnum Day, and we played 1 Desiree, and those would be technically your Fiendsmith cards, right? I would like to play 2 Requiem, but like I said, you summon all 15 of these cards every single game. Honorary Fiendsmith cards are Caesar and Necroquip. I would like to be able to play Chaos Angel, because I think it's a nice quote-unquote generic link too, as a lot of people like to make. But in terms of it, I didn't think it was necessary, so I decided not to play it to give me some extra slots in terms of what I would play in my extra deck. Necroquip you summon multiple times in the game, because now you can recycle it with an infusion spell. Same thing with Wave High King Caesar, because you notice it's a fiend, right? So you can recycle it with the fusion spell. On to other cards, we played 1 copy of Unchained Soul, Lord of Yama, and then Unchained Soul of Rage. I really like these cards. I like the layer of interruption it adds whenever you're comboing, and it feels like you have more to do with your cards than just simply make a Caesar and pass. Also, shout out to Nolan for letting me use this specific rarity. I didn't realize anyone had a misprint Yama with the Secret Foil. It's really cool. But being able to make these as you're comboing is actually really, really nice, because 1, it does give another layer, and 2, most people are so used to standard Fiendsmith combo lines that when they see this, it kind of takes them off what their thought process was. So now they hand trap you differently, so that's kind of nice too. And then because you're playing these, I feel like you're obligated to play this, because this is the best Dark Link 2 you can make by far. Because some lists I wasn't playing this Real Night just to make more utility for the fusion spell, but I found you absolutely have to have something to go into. So this, if you play these, this is mandatory for sure. But this is also a really good card, so I don't see myself getting it at any time. And then this is the deck I think plays this card the best, simply because it brings back your bodies, and it's also discarding other cards in your hands too. So it can get rid of your bricks. It can actually set up plays for your Fiendsmith stuff, because you can summon this, and then you generate so many cards off your natural play anyway that you should always theoretically have a discard for this card. And it can also discard cards like Fiendsmith Paradise and stuff like that. But being able to bring back monster and dodge, so in case, for example, they might have Nibiru or something like that, it's just a really good card to play into those. And that should be it for generic links, other than the Salamangreat Almirage. It comes up when you open the Bui, whatever her name is, plus a Bystial, that this lets you Fiendsmith combo, so you have to play this. The last 3 cards are fusions. So we play 1 copy of Aerial Eater, 1 copy of Duke of Demise, and 1 copy of Lucia the Dusk's Dark. You play Duke of Demise because it pairs very, very well with Branded Regain, being able to banish it to add back Fiendsmith Engraver, then put it back. It also gives your deck the unique distinction that if you're able to fusion summon for this, and then use it to fusion summon for this, that your deck will never run out of stuff to make out of the extra deck, right? So you will literally never run out of cards, and you will always outgrind your opponents. The normal summon effect doesn't come up very often, so be aware of that. But if you're playing this engine, I feel like this is mandatory. And then we play the 1 copy of Aerial Eater, because it can literally send any fiend from your deck to the graveyard, which obviously you have a bunch of options, but 9 times out of 10, you're usually sending this card because it'll give you access to the fusion spell to make this card going second, or just the combo, so that's a really cool interaction. And then pair it with the Unchained cards. There's a really cool play where you can send this, add the Mutiny in the Sky, and then you can use your Shavara to pop Soul of Rage, and then you get to add this back and revive one of the monsters and keep comboing, so that's just a really, really cool combo line. And then every once in a while, it comes up that you can special summon it back as an extra body, but that requires you to manage 2 of your engravers, so be wary of that. And then this card is insane. So for what you don't know, it's just like Bui. It makes it to where you cannot destroy monsters left and right most zone. And you can target a card on your opponent's side of the field, destroy it, send a fiend or fairy, sorry. And if you do, destroy that card, which is also insane. The other effect it has is if a card on your side of the field is destroyed by card effect, you can target 1 card on your opponent's side of the field and destroy it, which that effect doesn't come up as often in this particular deck, but it does come up enough to where it warrants it. So if you play it right, you're popping 2 cards, which is really nice. And it's really, really hard when you stick it against a Raizio player or a Mitsurugi player for that matter in the left and right zone. It's very, very hard for it to deal because it's so big and it cannot be destroyed by card effect. So they have to do it in a way where they can be able to stick a monster and run it over. Is going to be the best way to do it, but it's kind of hard when you have multiple interactions going on, right? But that is my extra deck. And then since this was the NAWCQ and I played this deck in multiple side events and stuff like that, I'll show you what I sided. So we played 3 copies of Lancia. Obviously, it's a silver bullet card for decks like your Malice strategies, but it's also like inherently good against other strategies too. So like, for example, the Orcus deck, if they can't banish their harps and stuff like that, it's very hard for them to actually make a relatively easy push, I should say. It's also hard for them to combo under this card too. In terms of other cards, I played 3 Radiant. The reason I played this is because I wanted a out to Liger Dancer post games 2 and 3. But it had to hit a very specific criteria where it also worked well with Mutiny in the Sky. It also had to be the right attribute and the right typing. This one being Dark Fiend actually works very, very well, specifically because it works with Bui. If I need to use it as a fusion summon for Aerial Eater because it's the same attribute. Also, because it's level 7, it can be banished for Aerial Eater to revive it, so that also came up multiple times as well. And then I also went with the board breaker approach in terms of 2 Lightning Storm and 1 Harpy's Feather Duster. Because I found, especially against like your meta matchups, if you blow away their non-engine, it is much easier to deal with their deck versus having to deal with it. Or like, for example, if you force them to prayers early, they can't just, in the middle of you playing back, they can't just prayers, bring back Marakramu to interrupt your plays, right? Even though we're playing the new Fiend cards, which kind of mitigate that, I just want to make it as easy as possible going second. So if I see these cards, like my hand feels much better if I see them. And then because we side 6 Charmies, I feel like it's mandatory that you have to side 6 Solemn cards. So I played 3 Judgment because I feel like it was the best out of all the choices. And I elected to play Warning instead of Strike because it can hit the Mitsurugi Ritual spell specifically. That is ulti first up, but we're not going to get into it. But that will bring us to the conclusion of my Fiendsmith Bystial deck with the new Fiend cards in it. Tell me what you guys think. I think after this one, since I've played it all format and it is my pet deck, I will finally profile my Blue Eye strategy, because that, like I said, it's probably one of my favorite decks and the most fun I've had playing Yu-Gi-Oh!, even though I don't think it really stands up or compares to the other decks currently in the format. But again, my name is Joseph's Duel Factory, and thank you for watching.